started. So welcome everyone to what is really CyberGuide Live Chat 7, but it's our very first one of 2022. Again, my name is Lauren and I'm part of the eCYBERMISSION staff. We'll be chatting a little bit about mission progress this evening, checking in, see how you guys are doing with your mission folder and give you some insider tips to how to have a great folder. So just a reminder, if you have any questions during this live chat, you can go ahead and use that Zoom chat to ask your questions, and we'll be dropping links in that chat as we go along. So be sure to pay attention to those links and save them for later. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So talking about a mission folder, if it's your first year with eCYBERMISSION, you probably wonder what a mission folder is. And really that mission folder is where you're going to put all of the answers to the questions that we ask you about your project. So whether you're working on exploring answers to questions with scientific inquiry or designing solutions to problems with engineering design, your mission folder is where you're going to go and answer the questions about your project. And it's a collaborative document between you and your teammates. So what makes a really great mission folder? What makes a good eCYBERMISSION project? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight, giving you some tips on how to make that project really shine. We'll also be giving you guys some ideas and checklists on things you should look for before you submit your mission folder. And just a reminder, your mission folders are due on March 2nd, 2022. So I know that seems like a long way away, but it's going to get here pretty soon. So just keep that in mind as you're working with your team on your project. So we do have some CyberGuides joining tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, our CyberGuides are STEM professionals, STEM experts who love science, technology, engineering, and math, and actually work in careers where they use STEM every day. And some of our CyberGuides have been judges before for eCYBERMISSION projects. So they have some really good insight on what makes a project really strong and really stand out. So our first CyberGuide I'd like to introduce you to this evening is CyberGuide Alex, who has been a virtual judge since 2018. CyberGuide Alex, do you have suggestions for students tonight on where to begin when they think about creating a great mission folder? Oh, we can't quite hear you. Or is it just me? Might be just me. I could hear you earlier. Try looking at selecting a microphone. If you click that mute button and the little arrow next to it, might let you select a microphone.
Can you hear that?
Yes, there it is. Thank you.
I'll try to speak loud. This one's farther away. You want to choose a project that it's going to be interesting. It's interesting to you. Hopefully, it'll get some kind of interesting result. If it's an engineering project, pick a problem that's really important in your community. If you're going to do a science project, scientific investigation, and try to pick a question that you're really interested in answering, but also is simple enough that you actually have a hope of getting some answers for your questions. Sometimes as a judge, I see projects that kids choose that there's just too much going on. They want to sort of do something really big, and that's going to take more time and more money and more experience than the kids really have. So keep it simple. Try to make it interesting. Communicate with your teachers and your team coaches, and use them to help choose the best problems. The next thing is just in your folder, don't rush, but don't leave answering all those questions to the last couple of days. Give yourself a lot of time. Don't rush, and then include a lot of pictures and videos. We love seeing For the judges, it gets kind of boring just reading all this text on the computer screen about and trying to gather from that what the project really was. If you did a science fair project on the same topic, show us a picture of that. If you could make a demonstration of what you invented, show us a video of that. You can link to YouTube clips and things like that, and show us pictures of your drawings and anything you've designed and built. So don't be shy, and pictures of your data. Make graphs if you have data, tables. We want to see it. We'll spend the time to look at everything that you give us. So don't rush. Don't rush putting your folders together.
Thank you, CyberGuide Alex. That's great advice. And I really like what you said about including photos of your data, whether it's charts or graphs or photos of your project. That is such great advice. And I definitely think that's a good spot to think about as you're building your folder too. And I did see a few questions in the chat that we are answering as we go on, but we did have one question about what is a mission folder? And just to reiterate, if you're just joining, we're talking about how to have a really strong mission folder this evening, which is just another way of saying a really strong eCyberMission project. So your mission folder is where you include all of the information and data about your project and where you answer questions that we ask you about how it worked as you progressed in your experiment or your prototype. We do have a question from somebody with their hand up. You can go ahead and ask your question. If you want to unmute and ask your question, feel free.
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling with unmuting. My name is Ashima, and I'm based out of New Jersey. My question is that if I want to discuss the relevance of the project or the research that my team is doing, do I have an opportunity to discuss at least whether the idea is appropriate to eCyberMission or not?
Yeah, so if you have questions about that, what I recommend doing is actually sending over an email to our eCyberMission staff, and I'll put that email in the chat. But if you email mission control at eCyberMission.com, they'll be able to answer your question really easily. So that's definitely the first place that I'd recommend going if you had a question about what your project should be and where you should gather research. Great question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you, CyberGuide Alex, for that again. I just want to remind everybody that as you're working, oh, I think I was muted for a second. One of the great ways to think about starting your project is just to make sure that you include videos, photos, and supporting documents. Now, if you are uploading documents to your mission folder, just make sure that if it's a document, say from a Google Drive, that you update the permissions and the security permissions so that anyone with the link can view. It's really sad when you submit a project and it goes to our virtual judges, they click on the link to view the attachment, and then it says, oh, you're not allowed to view this document. So just make sure any attachments that you add in your mission folder have updated permissions so that anybody with the link can view. Now we do have another CyberGuide on this evening, CyberGuide Aisha. And Aisha, do you have any suggestions or tips for students on how to have a great project and ways that they can really let their skills and teamwork shine in their project?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I have not been a judge before. This will be my first year participating as a judge, and this is my first year as a CyberGuide. But I work as an immunologist, and what that just means is that I study how the body responds to different infections. And so I do a lot of experiments of which we have to write a lot of different reports and prepare that even presentations to present to our department and other people in the scientific community. And so it's a really important aspect of science as a career. And I think, so I haven't prepared or reviewed these mission folders yet, but from some of the things that I've been able to see that's available online, I think the access to the judging rubrics is really helpful, just in terms of making sure that you have the right content, you know exactly what they're looking for. One of the things that I find really helpful in my own experiments, whether I'm just talking about the design or thinking about how to present something, is to talk about that with someone else who's less familiar with the project, because they can often point out where there might be holes or ask you a question that you maybe hadn't thought of, and you could think about your experiment in a different way. And I think those are actually some of the most fun conversations that I get to have at work, is just discussing what data means and where it could go and what the implications or kind of consequences of this sort of an observation might mean. And so it can be really, really helpful in thinking about how to design your experiment, but also how to relay the importance of your experiment and relay your findings in a really meaningful and impactful way, so that the audience that you're trying to present your data to can understand the value of what you've just done. And one of the things that helps along with that, that I will piggyback off of Alex's comments, are figures. And this can be really helpful for, showing the raw data that you have or the analyzed data, but we also can generate summary figures that are really helpful in just showing people the overall big picture of what your findings are and what they mean. And there are also a lot of figure generating softwares or kind of subscriptions that have free trials. And so this is something you would need to do with your kind of team guide or a parent to make sure that you're signing up for something that's a trial, but it might be something worth looking into if you need help with something like that. But you could also do a lot in just PowerPoint and other software that are on most computers.
Thank you, CyberGuide Aisha. That's really helpful. And we definitely get a lot of mission folders that don't have attachments. They're just answering the question, and that's great. But if you want to add your figures, your images, or PowerPoints, PDFs, any uploads or attachments, you are more than welcome to do so. It's not required, but it certainly does help your mission folder stand out. So talking about the mission folder, we've already heard some of these tips, but these are some of the insider tips that I could think of after my experience looking at a lot of mission folders last year. So the first one is to look at the examples. We actually have mission folder examples online on the eCYBERMISSION website. So if you go to eCYBERMISSION.com, and if you have a student account, if you sign in, you'll be able to find examples in the Student Help Center. So you can look at examples of past winners to get some inspiration of the folders that stood out the very most for the past competition year. And I've got a screenshot of where you can find that. So if you go again to eCYBERMISSION.com and you sign into your student account or your team advisor account, you can see the Help Center is the link down on the side menu. And then you can see where I've circled mission folder examples to see where to find that. Here's where to find your past winners. So when you go on to eCYBERMISSION.com, scroll down close to the bottom, you can see a list of our past winners and their grades, or you can scroll all the way down to the bottom under the FAQ in the yellow banner and click on the winner link there to view previous year's winners. It's a few different ways to find the same information. So one of the other insider tips that I want to bring up is that it's just really important to read the questions that are asked. So remember, a mission folder is a series of questions that are asked about your project, and your answers combined with those questions build your mission folder. So just remember to read those questions really carefully, make sure you understand the question. And if you don't, you can ask a teammate or your team advisor or your parent or guardian what they think that question might mean. Also, you may not have noticed this, but if you go into your mission folder, there's a question mark icon next to each question. And if you click on that, you'll see a further explanation. So that's really helpful. If you read one of the questions and you're not quite sure what it means, just click on that question mark next to it and you'll get a great summary and some further help with that question. Now, CyberGuide, Aisha mentioned the judging rubrics, and we did put the links to those in the chat, but they are on our website. So I've got a screenshot of where to find those. This is from your student account. So if you sign in, you're gonna see your name at the top, you'll see Manage Mission folder, and then on the bottom right, you'll see the tools and resources. You can click on the judging rubrics that I've circled here on the screen, and you'll be able to see both rubrics. So that'll just tell you a little bit about what those virtual judges will be looking at as they're reviewing your mission folders. So you can figure out how the scoring works and just make sure that you answer the questions fully. That's one of the really big parts of the rubrics. That's how we score your mission folders, is to make sure that question is answered in full. We do have a few questions in the chat here. Looks like Catherine is taking care of those. And yes, the Student Help Center is full of amazing resources. So you can find that from your homepage as well. And our Team Advisor Help Center is really awesome as well. There's so many great resources found in our help centers. So talking a little bit about the rubrics and what our judges look for, kind of broke it down into a chart here for you. And what they're really going to be looking at is the application of either your scientific inquiry or your engineering design process. So that's 70% of the mission folder, is looking at how you applied what you learned to your project. And then another really big part, 18%, is the benefit to the community. And this is where sometimes it can get tricky. So eCYBERMISSION projects are all about benefit to the community. So it's really important to think about how what you're working on can cause positive change, positive impact or benefit to your community, whether it's your neighborhood, your school, your town, even broader at your state level. So we see a really amazing projects, and they're all either questions that are being answered or problems that are being solved to benefit the community. So keep that in mind as you're working on your project. And then 12% is going to be team collaboration. And what that means is basically, how well did you work together as a team? And whether you're a team of 2 or 4, it's really important to know your strengths and how you succeeded, how you worked well together. What were you good at? What were your roles in the project? Some people kind of like working on maybe the visuals of the project, whether it's a graph or a chart. Some people really like documenting, so they might be drafting up answers to those mission folder questions. Or maybe some people really like organization, so they might be in charge of figuring out when your team is going to be meeting at school or after school with your team advisor. Those are all things to think about as you are working on your project. That team collaboration is really fun. It's when we really get to see how you work together as a team and the ways that you are able to succeed because you're stronger together. So that's a little bit of what the judges are looking for after you submit your projects on March 2nd. Okay, the next tip is listing all the steps in your investigation, or listing all the steps in your construction of your model or prototype. And both of our cyber guides kind of talked about this a little bit. It's really that anybody who reads your folder should be able to understand or visualize, or at least know what you did without having to actually talk to you, or sometimes even see it. And this is where those uploads of the photos or any uploads of videos or PowerPoints can be really helpful in your project, because it will help us get a good idea of what you're working on. But a really important thing to take away from this tip is be really clear in what you worked on why you did it, and what you noticed about it. So what did you observe? What worked? What didn't work? Listing all the steps in your process, whether it was the scientific inquiry or engineering design, it's really helpful for your mission folder, and it'll really help it stand out. All right, now I'm going kind of quick, but I want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end. Got another tip for you. This one goes right along with the previous one, step 4. Step 5 is making sure your process and explanation is really clear. And both of our CyberGuides mentioned this too. So having another student who isn't on your team and who does not know about your project, having them read through your responses, read through the mission folder and see if they understand it, that's a great test of how well your project is prepared and how ready you are to submit your mission folder. So having somebody else read through it without you having to explain more is a great way to prepare for submitting that mission folder. If someone reads through it, they have a few questions and you do need to explain a bit more, add it to your mission folder. Whatever you had to explain to your friend or your parent or your neighbor, add that in to your mission folder answer. And that'll go a long way to helping your mission folder stand out. The next part goes right along with the previous tips. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to edit and proofread what you're writing. And I have to do this every day. So having somebody else look through it, or maybe stepping away, getting a snack, coming back and looking at it after you've not looked at it for a few minutes, that can really help you know that your presentation is ready to go, that your project is good. And having a grown-up read through your mission folder before you submit it is a good idea too. Whether it's your team advisor, your parent or guardian, or your friend, it's always good to have another set of eyes on your project before you submit it. So make sure it's all good to go and you'll be all set for mission folder submission. So I know that we've covered a lot this evening about your mission folder. We've had a lot of tips for you. What questions do you guys have for us? You're welcome to put those questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask your question out loud. All right, we have one person with their hand up. Go ahead and ask your question, Team West.
So I was just wondering if there's like a limit to how much you could put in the mission folder.
That's a fantastic question. To my knowledge, there is not a limit to what you can upload. Catherine, jump in if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if there's a limit on the characters that you can put in your mission folder. That's a really good question.
I don't know either. I don't think so. I don't remember seeing anything last year.
Yeah, I don't believe that there is, but you can always add attachments. And to my knowledge, there's no limit to the amount of attachments that you can put on your mission folder. Great question. If you have further questions about character limits or how many characters your mission folder can have, you can always email missioncontrol@eCYBERMISSION.com as well. Thanks for that question. All right, we have another question from Annika. Go ahead and let us help you out.
Okay, so when we're actually presenting like our mission folder, like do we have to show it on a Google Slides, or do we just have to hand in our mission folder?
Great question. So you actually don't have to present it unless that's something that your team is going to do for your class or your school. For submitting your folder to us at eCYBERMISSION, all you have to do is log into your account and your team advisor will hit submit folder. So you don't have to present it or do any Google presentation. I think what we mentioned earlier about attachments is where the Google Slides or the PowerPoint would come in. Some teams do decide to upload a Google slide or a PowerPoint presentation. My speaker's talking to me, but it's not required. So if you want to add it in, you're certainly welcome to, but you don't actually have to do a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Another question from Gabriel.
Hi, yes. So, my team and I have been doing a lot of electrical work, and one of our team members' father is an electrical engineer. So we were wondering if we can use him as a resource or if that would count as, I don't know, like cheating because we're using someone else.
That's a great question. So I would just say that that person would be a great source to cite. So any information that you get, you can include who it came from. And as long as you have their permission, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and we did get an answer to that. So that earlier question from Team West about a character limit for the mission folder, there is a character limit for the abstract section, which is basically where your team will go in and write a summary of what your project was. So there is a character limit for that one section, but not for the others. All right, another question from Vino. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so my team member, I am the coach for the team, and my son and his friends are doing the project. They are also doing some other STEM project. So can we do a single project and submit it in both STEM competitions?
That's a great question. We have heard that before. So as long as you are able to make that eCYBERMISSION project, answer all of the questions, have a complete mission folder, that's fine. Your project belongs to you and your team. So what you do with it is entirely up to you. And if you enter it into other competitions, we have no problem with that.
Okay, thank you so much. And do we need to register separately because I have created the team and added the type of projects they will be doing? Should I do anything else? And is there any way to send email messages or communications through online?
Between you and your team?
Yeah.
So that really is up to your team on how you're going to collaborate. A lot of teams have maybe a shared Google folder, a Google Drive where they can collaborate. But if your students are looking to collaborate with some of our CyberGuide experts too, I would suggest that they create Cronus profiles. We can put the link to that in the chat. Cronus is basically a platform that eCYBERMISSION uses to connect eCYBERMISSION students with CyberGuide experts. So if the students have any questions about STEM, they're able to ask that expert. But as far as your team being able to communicate within one platform, that would be up to you to decide what platform you want to use. eCYBERMISSION does not have one at this time that integrates that way. However, when you all are on a team together and you log into all of your accounts, you're going to be able to see the same mission folder. I just would suggest that if you are all viewing it at the same time, you just have one person designated to add updates and save it so you don't accidentally overwrite what the other person is doing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. Great question. Do we have another question? If so, go ahead.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
So me and my partner, so we made everything that we're typing like for our mission folder, it's on paper. So when we actually turn in our mission folder, do we have to just type it out and then send it in?
Yeah, so it is submitted digitally. So even it's perfectly fine that you have it all written out, but you will need to designate someone on your team to go in and type the answers in the mission folder once you log in. And then your team advisor will click submit folder once you're all done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Hi, since is this sponsored by the U.S. Army?
Yeah, so eCYBERMISSION is one of many of the Army educational outreach programs, and we are sponsored by the U.S. Army. and the competition is administered by the National Science Teaching Association.
All right, so the projects that the students submit, do they, does the intellectual rights remain with the students, or does the Army retain any of that?
Great question. The project and the intellectual rights belong entirely to the students and their teams. So that is your project to do what you will with it. We don't own it in any way.
Excellent, thank you.
So,
you're welcome.
Let me add to that as well. If you visit our rules section on section 10, competition changes and intellectual property, it really outlines and it also provides more information to answer your question.
Thank you, Catherine.
We did get a few questions in the chat as well. How do I know that my team is completely registered? We have teams, team names, and I'm listed as the advisor. Is there anything else we need to do to finalize the registration? So just like we just responded, thank you, Catherine. If you have any questions about your status, you can email missioncontrol@eCYBERMISSION.com. And that's your first resource if you have any questions about rules or registration or anything like that. And in response to the other question in the chat, prototypes can be digital. That's completely fine. You can have a physical prototype, you can have a digital prototype, or you can kind of think about how your prototype might work if you're not able to actually get materials to create it. Great question, everyone. Any questions so far for our CyberGuides, CyberGuide Alex or CyberGuide Aisha, about their jobs or their experiences in team projects? If you have any questions for them, now is a great time to ask as well.
I did have another thought, Lauren, if we have a moment while we're waiting for another question. One thing that you had mentioned was, and it's also talked about a bit in the rubric, particularly in the scientific inquiry one, when you're discussing your data collection and your analysis and how your results related back to your hypothesis, was if something didn't work, or maybe you got a negative result, or the result was just something that you didn't expect. And I think sometimes people often get really worried when this happens. And so I just want to highlight and reassure to everyone that this often occurs in the lab. And it's actually a really important part of thinking about how you think things work. And so sometimes this might be due to something technical. Maybe it's the type of instrument that you're using. Sometimes it might be that you need to change your hypothesis. And this is something that I think is a really good, it's really nice to see in discussion sections, even in papers that we write for official science journals, but also just in student discussions and thinking about what their data means is what were some of the strengths and limitations of your experiment. And if you did get a negative result or a result that you didn't expect, why do you think that that happened? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you can gain a lot of information even from something not working out the way that you had anticipated.
Thank you, CyberGuide Aisha. That's so important. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think sometimes our reaction when we don't really see the outcome we expect is to think that something went wrong. Whereas really we're just learning more about what to do next time. So if that does happen to your team, it's not wrong, it's not a failure. You learned more about what you can investigate further. So thank you, that's a wonderful tip. How many of our teams today are working on scientific inquiry projects? Let us know in the chat. You can just give me an exclamation point if you're working on a scientific inquiry project. Oh, love it. Okay, cool. How many of you are working on engineering design? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of those too. Wonderful. So we have great resources again on our website. So if you have further questions about the rubric or about the timeline of your project, We have so many great resources. We also have a YouTube channel with some cool videos on it too. So be sure to check out the YouTube channel. It's eCYBERMISSION team. If you type that into YouTube, you're going to see a lot of great resources there. We are having a really exciting live chat coming up in about 2 weeks from today. So I just want to give you guys the first knowledge about it. We are going to have some special guest engineers from NASA joining us on Wednesday, January 26th from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll be talking a lot about engineering design and some of the amazing possibilities of STEM careers for our really cool guests. So make sure that you join. It's the exact same link that you used tonight. We'll send out an email announcement, but we'd love to see you again in 2 weeks for our next live chat. If you guys have further questions, I'm going to go ahead and stay on the line this evening, but I'm going to go ahead and end our recording. Just want to wish you all a very happy new year. Happy January. Good luck on all your projects. Thank you so much to our CyberGuides for joining this evening. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next live chat. Have a great evening and stay on if you have more questions. We would love to keep chatting with you. Good luck, everybody.